Hey guys, today I'm going to be covering 4 of the 6 elements that Gert Hofstede has put into place about national culture, and these elements and how they play a role in the United States specifically. And then I'll be going into detail and give an example about the United States and its high or low context culture. The 4 elements that I've chosen today are first, individualism; second, power distance; third, masculinity; and fourth, indulgence. So these 4 elements I feel are very important, not only for the 6D theory, but also for the high and low context culture topic. But to begin, individualism is much more of an independent individual, as it says, form of living and culture. The United States is definitely more of an individual country. We believe much more in small business, private ownership, private land. All these things play a role in this individual, like independent theory. These things all play a role in how we perceive ourselves as well. It's much more of a family-oriented or individual-oriented lifestyle. The second one is power distance. The United States has a much less centralized form of government. It has a less centralized form of power in general. You can see this in the government, you can see this in businesses, you can see this in families. All of this, it's much more of a self-reliant form of living. The third one is masculinity. The third element that I've chosen is masculinity. Now, I found an article from cron.com in the small business section about masculinity versus femininity in the workplace. And one thing I found interesting about this was that these attributes that are expected of people, or that culturally are expected of people, have an effect on how men and women work in the workplace, because the United States is much more masculine as a whole. And as we can see in this article I was studying, the women tend to take on more masculine attributes because it's an expected attribute. You're expected to be more hardworking, more resilient, more empowered, and all these things are expected in our culture. But nowadays, I think it's kind of cool how rather than in the 1950s or 60s, where the man was supposed to work and the woman was supposed to stay at home and cook and clean, that role is starting to change a little bit in the United States. But as a whole, the United States is more masculine in general. The fourth element is indulgence. The United States as a whole is a very indulgent country. Examples of this include sporting events, include amusement parks, hanging out with friends. It's a much more extroverted culture, as where other countries maybe stay at home more often, or maybe just watch a sporting event every so often, or don't hang out with friends as often. The United States is much more outgoing and much more indulgent in the things that should be enjoyable in life. And on the nextbillion.net website, they were talking about how in other cultures they're much more accepting of maybe hard jobs or jobs that aren't enjoyable, versus the United States, where if you don't enjoy a job or a boss, you switch that job, or you find something more enjoyable, or you find something to de-stress. And that's a form of that indulgence in the United States, where we enjoy de-stressing. We find fun in life. Not saying that other countries don't find that, but it's just a different form of living. And all of these 4 elements bring into the idea that the USA is a low context culture. You know, that individual form of living, a much more independent, specific and defined form of living, whereas other countries, maybe you have hand signals or body language. The United States is all written out, almost set in stone in some cases, and it's much more we're much more punctual. There's things that are very defined for us in our communications. And one thing that I have learned, I had the opportunity to go to Peru and learn another culture. One thing that I learned about them is that they're much more, they're quieter about things. They're much more introverted. And then once you get to know them better and form a relationship, they tend to come out of that shell a little bit more. And I found that interesting because here in the United States, it's usually right on the mark. When you start talking to someone, they usually open up a little bit more than people from other countries. So that's one thing I found that was interesting. But to summarize, the individualist, the power distance, the masculinity, and the indulgence of the United States all play key roles in making it a low context culture as well as what the United States is today. Thanks.